If you clicked on this video, you're probably looking for a foolproof way to qualify your leads through your setting process. And if you're trying to scale any sort of coaching funnel that requires setters or dialers, in this video, you'll discover the 3 qualification strategies we use to vet every single lead that gets booked onto a closer's calendar. And these 3 strategies are pretty simple to implement. We've used them on multiple offers that have scaled massively, just like Alex Nealon, who hit a first $1 million month from DM setting plus dialing. That is Alex's primary funnel. And that's not something we would have been able to scale if we weren't able to qualify every single lead that we were talking to. There's hundreds of leads per day, if not thousands. And then there's people like Theta Warrior. Theta Warrior went from 20K months to 20K days with his high ticket coaching offer. And in part, those results came from being able to qualify every single lead that opted into his trading funnel. And when you implement these 3 simple strategies that I'm going to go over today into your setting funnel or your dialing funnel, you're going to be able to bulletproof your calendars. So you're not going to be speaking to any more broke leads. You're not going to have unqualified leads talking to your closers. Your closers, your sales team won't hate you. And most importantly, they're going to be saving time and money, right? Because every single hour that a closer, that your closer, even you, right, if you're taking sales calls, spends speaking to unqualified leads is time that could have been spent speaking to someone who had the money to pay for your program. So when you get more qualified calls, you're going to get more revenue for your business. And so you're going to be able to scale, because you need to understand that every single lead who's unqualified that you prevent from going onto your calendar is an hour that you're saving. It's time that your team, that you get back on your sales calls to actually use for people who you can help. So the first qualification strategy that you can use in both a dialing or a setting process applies to the start of the conversation that any of your setters or your dialers have. This is going to be the first or second question that you're going to have in your dialing script or in your setting script. And this is going to be something that setters or dialers will ask immediately, because it soft qualifies without actually being salesy, right? I'm not talking about asking people how much money they have right when you start the conversation. Obviously, that's not going to work. So just to give you an example of what I mean here, let me give you a fitness example, right? This question here, hey name, just so I can send you the right trainings, how much weight do you need to lose? It doesn't look like a qualification question, but it is, right? It's an innocent looking question, but it's a data-driven qualification question. Because with Alex's offer, when we hit $1 million a month, and before that, we have data that shows us what is the likelihood of someone closing depending on the amount of weight they need to lose. Why? Why is there a correlation? Well, that's because if someone has to lose more weight, that typically means they're in more pain, which means they have more urgency to act, and they would trade more money, right, more resources for the outcome of being able to live longer, right, being healthy, all those things. And we found out that 90% of people who had less than 20 pounds to lose would not close. Closing rate on those people would drop to sub 10%. And so those leads were not worth speaking to, at least for the high ticket offer. And here's the important part. We didn't just ghost those leads and stop talking to them because, we didn't want to book them on a sales call. We sent them to a free training because typically people will gain more weight, right? The problem that they're experiencing that you help them with will typically only get worse. And this applies to pretty much every single niche, whether it's trading, dropshipping, right? They're going to struggle for longer, most people. So when we sent them that free training, we saved time, right? Within the first 2 questions in the setting or the dialing process, and we got the lead into our ecosystem either way, right? So if the problem does get worse, who do they come back to? It's going to be us. Now, how do you actually replicate this? Look at the leads who you've closed, and you can look at your sales calls. You can take these transcripts and even do this with AI. It's pretty simple. And what you're going to be looking for are specific outliers of pain points or levels of pain points for the leads who have the highest closing percentage, right? Or the leads with pains that have the highest closing percentages and the highest cash collection per call. And again, this could be a specific pain point that they have, or a list of specific pain points, things they're struggling with, or it could be a level of a pain point, right? So if I give you a trading example, with trading, this could be that leads who have lost over $10,000 to the markets are closing at a 40% rate compared to all these other leads who are just closing at 20%. And that is the next step. It's finding the outliers with the lowest closing rate and the lowest cash collected per call. You're going to be looking for the specific pain points or levels of the pain, the negative outliers, right? The time wasters have. And once you do this, you're going to have a specific pain point or list of pain points or a level of a pain point, right? With this, the level of the pain point is how much weight they need to lose, right? With a trading example, it's how much money they've lost to the markets. These are just examples. You can set that as a criteria for your setters and dialers to look out for and qualify against that criteria. If someone is under or over that specific criteria that applies to your offer, well, they're not qualified, right? And you're able to redirect them to a free training, and they're not qualified because of past data, right? Past behaviors, past patterns typically indicate the future. So you're going to be safely able to disqualify them and send them to a free training or a low ticket downsell and not waste your time taking a sales call with them or your closer stack. And this is where most offer owners that I see just screw up. They have high drop-off rates and booking rates. They don't have enough trust or awareness from the leads, and they don't realize this. And they ask direct money questions, which just kill momentum in the conversation, whether it's a setting conversation in DMs or a dialer speaking on the phone to someone. And that is the wrong approach. In most niches, it's not the best idea to just straight up ask people how much they have to invest in your program after, a 20-minute or 15-minute conversation in DMs or over a phone call. And it's also not a good idea to just directly ask this question right after pitching your call, because typically, even though you get a little bit more commitment, you're still going to have the same outcomes. And this just doesn't work because the people just put up their guards. And taking these approaches usually doesn't work because right away you create sales resistance in your leads. They put up their guard, and even if they, tell you how much money they have, they just don't show up to the call, and then you have a shitty show up rate because they have an internal money objection that you or your setting process created. And a lot of the times you're going to have people who do tell you how much money they have to invest, but they don't tell you the truth, right? If I'm trying to get a deal on something, or if I'm trying to get a best deal, and someone asks me how much money do I have to put into this thing, I'm typically gonna, try to lowball them and tell them the lowest amount. And a lot of leads and a lot of different offers will do the same thing, right, to get the best deal. But there's a fix to this by indirectly financially qualifying them. And what this does is, number one, it reduces the chances of them lying because they don't put their guards up. It increases your show up rates because people don't internalize a money objection, right, that your setting or dialing process creates. And it also increases your booking rate, right? You don't suffer from a high drop-off rate from call pitch and financial qualifier to call booked because of the same reasons that I just mentioned. And you can do this in direct financial qualification by asking them questions that indicate their financial capacity without directly asking about it. So let me go into an example, right? With fitness, what we did with Alex specifically, right, it's a fitness offer. Our question became, do you work a sedentary job that leads to weight gain? And this seems like a very indirect, question. It doesn't really trigger any sort of money objections, right? Because we're asking about their lifestyle essentially, right? The lifestyle factors that affect their weight gain. But what it actually gives us is their job, and then we're able to reverse engineer their income because they tell us, right, they work as an accountant, and then we look at, the specific country or where they're from, because we see that from their number, their phone number when they opt in, or if you don't see that, you can ask people that. That's not going to trigger any resistance. And once you have that job title, you can see what is the average income of X job, right, median income in X country, right? When you get that annual number, the annual income, that's important. You're able to indirectly find their financial capacity to invest without directly asking them how much money they want to pay for your program. And by the way, this is just one example. In trading, instead of asking them how much money do you have to pay for my trading program, so this was with Theta Warrior, right? We asked them how much capital do they have to allocate to their markets. And now we're not asking them how much do you have to pay for my mentorship. We're asking them a logistical question, right? That doesn't trigger as much sales resistance. Now, specifically for the jobs, I just want to note on that before I move on. If you don't know, what is the annual income of someone who can afford your program, just look at your past customers' history, right? Find out what are your customers, right, your previous clients making on average. This is exactly what we did, and find that number. You're going to be able to see, okay, if this job annually on average makes less than this number, then I'm not going to book them on a call and they're disqualified. And once you find out that someone is disqualified at this stage of the conversation, whether it's DM setting or dialing, your setters can either talk about the minimum payment plans required for your program right before booking them onto the calendar, or they can just downsell them onto a mid-ticket program or a low-ticket program. But the main thing that I see people doing wrong, and you need to get this nailed down if you're downselling people, right? You need to make sure that people feel like they're getting the better end of the deal. Even if they're not qualified for the high ticket, they need to feel like the winner in the deal, in that interaction. There is absolutely no case when your setters or dialers should be downselling and straight up telling people, yo, you're disqualified from the high ticket, because that hurts the ego, right? And then when the person's ego is hurt, yo, I'm not qualified for this, right? I'm not a good fit for this. I can't do this. I'm not worthy of this, right? That's what they think internally. And then they're not going to buy your mid ticket or your low ticket downsell because you essentially hurt their feelings, right? In a way. So they still need to feel like they're winning the better end of the deal when you do a downsell, right? And a few years ago, he was selling his BMW. It was a beat up car. He listed it for $5,500. Everyone was selling that same car on marketplace for $4,000, right? Same car, same mileage, and he's priced it above the market. And my friend did it intentionally. He knew what he was doing, right? He was trying to sell it for more. So when he did eventually get a buyer, the buyer offered him $4,500, right? My friend asked him for $5,200. He negotiated back. The buyer said, okay, let's do $5,000. But instead of just accepting the already good deal, right, that was already above market, my friend sighed. He looked frustrated. He looked disappointed, and he made it seem like he was disappointed, right? He was frustrated because that was just too low of an amount to get for this car that told him he loved. He made it seem like it's difficult to part with this car for that amount of money, even though internally he knew it's a good deal. And eventually my friend agreed, right, after putting on this act. And the buyer, when he saw this, he felt like he's getting a great deal because he's getting something scarce, right? My friend is not wanting to part with his car. He's giving it away. He's almost like he's forced to give the car away, even though the buyer was overpaying what the market was selling this car for. It turned this into a win-win. And then my friend obviously got a great deal. This needs to be applied to your downsells, because if it's not, then you're not going to be able to downsell anything, where he's going to downsell at a very low percentage, and you're going to be wondering why it's not converting, right? Why your downsell isn't converting with your unqualified leads. So the first thing is you need to position the mid-ticket downsell in the right way. You need to sell as soon as you know someone's disqualified. You need to start selling against the high ticket. At the same time, you're selling against not buying anything at all, right? Changing nothing, and make the downsell feel like a win-win. Again, the worst mistake you can make here as soon as someone is disqualified is telling them they just aren't qualified, right? And they're going to feel like they're losing. They're not going to feel like they're winning. So they're not going to buy anything. So you need to position it and essentially say something along the lines of, this is on a dialer, you're going to have to restructure this. Things along the lines of, it's almost the same thing as XYZ high ticket program. The high ticket costs 10 times more, and this is the same thing. You don't need it right now. Telling them that they don't need the high ticket program right now based on their situation, because they're actually closer to success than they believe, for example. And telling them they're going to benefit from the downsell, whether it's a mid ticket or a low ticket offer, then they will benefit from the high ticket. You're creating a perception that they're winning. They're getting a steal. They're getting the secret offer, the secret downsell sale offer that's priced 10 times lower than the high ticket that's almost the same thing, and they're getting this special discount, they're getting this special price, and they're still getting what they came after. So once you do this correct, you're going to be able to collect cash specifically from disqualified leads. You're not just abandoning them and losing money on them, right? They're still leads, and instead you're getting them into your ecosystem, because these disqualified leads, they can be upsold down the line. Okay, they're going to be in your ecosystem. If you just abandon them, they're going to go to your competitors when they have enough money. When you can downsell them onto a low ticket or mid ticket offer, they're going to buy from you again if your product is good. Now, the third strategy for qualifying your leads is adding triage calls. Okay, there's two types of triage calls. For the MSET calls, so if a sales call gets booked by the MSEtter, you're going to have a call confirmation person. Depending on the size of your offer, you're going to have 1 or 2 people do this full time. If you don't have a big offer, if you're under 200, 300K per month, or you just don't have that call volume, you're just going to have your existing dialers do this. Okay, or you can do this yourself, right? Depending on where you're sitting at with your offer. But as soon as you book a call from the DMs, you're going to have an instant triage call to them. Okay, and this is going to be literally a phone call, right? A double dial if they don't pick up the first time, and you're going to be saying, hey, we're just confirming a few details, right? So when they pick up, hey, we saw that you booked this call, just wanted to confirm a few details, right? So it seems like a call just confirming logistics. But what you can actually do is requalify them, because you can run through the qualification process again, right? So by the way, how much weight did you have to lose again? Just so I can clarify this and log this in the system. Our system had a tech break, right? And then you can go again and ask them a job question or another indirect financial qualifier. For dialer calls, so if someone's booked by a dialer, you're not going to obviously have a call confirmation, someone called them right after you just spoke with someone from your team. So instead, you're going to call them the night before the call and confirm if they're still making it, and re-vet them, requalify them on this call. Not only will this help you qualify your leads and make your calendars bulletproof, it's also going to obviously increase your show rate, because you have an additional touch point confirming if they're still making it to the sales call. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is making sure that your dialers and setters actually do this if you have a team. Okay, if you have a team, add a quality accountability channel. This is something we do on pretty much every offer we manage. Create a channel with the entire sales team, so the closers, the setters, dialers, and what this is going to do is create a pretty much autonomous public accountability system between your sales team. Because what's going to happen is when a closer does take a disqualified call, even if you implement all the 3 strategies that I talked about, it still could happen. There's still could be people who are going to slip through. It's inevitable. And when that happens, the disqualified lead slips through, the closer calls out the setter or dialer in this group chat, right, of your sales team, and they're going to call them out. And what's going to happen is, of course, the person who's in question, a dialer or setter in question, they don't want to get called out, right? The person who's in question is going to learn the lesson, right? And they're not going to book disqualified leads like that again. The other people, other dialers and setters, will see the example, and no one wants to get called out, in a channel like this. And the entire team is going to improve from this. Now, from your end, as the operator of your business, you're going to be able to see why leads aren't qualified. You're going to be able to see patterns. You're going to understand why these qualification systems that you have in place aren't working to their full potential. And you're going to have a real-time feedback loop. As you scale your business, you're typically going to have an expansion in your audience, whether it's going to be through cold traffic, right? As you spend more money, the people you attract will change, or if you're doing organic, your audience will expand, and you're going to be able to see if there's any new unqualified lead types emerging. And once this happens, you're going to be able to update your qualification standards when you see these new patterns pop up, and continue keeping your qualification process bulletproof, right? You're able to continuously improve and adapt from this real-time live feedback loop, which is the quality accountability channel. By the way, the breakdown of how we scaled Alex to $1 million a month USD and got Theta Warrior from doing 20K per month to hitting 20K days, and I believe hitting now it's over 700,000 with this high ticket. I'm going to link that down in the description. You're going to be able to see how we implemented the dialing and setting qualification process for them. Now, if you want to scale faster, you want to get to 100K per month, 200K per month, and beyond, click the first link in the description of this video and book your free business audit call with me. On that call, we'll be able to identify what needs to be optimized in your sales process, and we're going to show you how you can add an extra 50 to 200K per month in the next 60 days. And if we align on that call, we're going to show you how we can implement everything we give you, all the tips, all the advice for you. And of course, because it's on a done for you basis, you're going to get your time back, you're going to get your freedom back while doing this, and you're going to be able to honestly hit your business goals faster, just like Alex or Theta Warrior did. So if that's something that you're curious about, click the first link in the description of this video, book your call, or if you have any questions, just DM me on Instagram.